This is the Zhiyun Crane 4, and this is the Zhiyun Cinepeer Crane 4E. And if you're thinking about which one to get, in this video, you'll be able to find out which one will work for you. These two gimbals are Zhiyun's sort of quote-unquote large size gimbals, and they handle pretty heavy setups. If you wanted something that is lighter and perhaps you have a more compact camera, I made a video talking about the different classes of gimbals that Zhiyun has in another video before, so I'll link that in the description below if you wanted to find out whether you should be getting either the Zhiyun, let me show you. This one, the Zhiyun Crane M3S, this little tiny compact gimbal that can surprisingly handle a full frame camera. The Zhiyun Weebill 3S, this is their mid-size sort of gimbal. So these two are cheaper and lighter than the Zhiyun Crane 4 and the Cinepeer Crane 4E. But if your setup is a little bit heavier, these two might not handle whatever setup you have. So you have to consider maybe the 4 or the 4E. So in terms of similarities, the first thing that you're going to observe is that they're both pretty much physically the same gimbal. They have the exact same body, the exact same plates, albeit the plate on the Crane 4 is a little bit longer, but pretty much the same. The supporting base plate for your camera is also the same, and a lot of the stuff here is the same. They have the same payload of 13.2 pounds, which is quite a lot, and I honestly do not like having very heavy setups on my gimbals. I usually like to go compact. So a full frame camera, maybe a standard zoom, and that's pretty much the heaviest setup that I normally use. But you can use these with heavier setups if you have the guns for it. I'm still trying to work on those. They both have very similar weights. The Crane 4 weighs 3.68 pounds and the Cinepeer Crane 4E weighs 3.6 pounds. So about the same weight. Both of these can connect to your camera, and you can press the recording button here and have the gimbal control the shutter on your camera to start and stop recording. You can customize the front trigger and the dial on both of these gimbals, which is very handy. The charging port is in the same location for both. The battery, which is this little foot at the bottom, it's in the same place for both. The front dial here, this one seems to have, the Crane 4 seems to have a little bit more resistance than the Crane 4E, but just very marginal. The trigger feels the same, so you can triple tap to go in selfie mode, triple tap again and it'll go back to regular mode. If at any point you want it to go back to its standard position, just double tap that front trigger. The three locks for the three axes on these two gimbals are located in the exact same places. The way you balance this gimbal is also exactly the same. The way the menu looks and how it's set up is also exactly the same for these two gimbals. You have an extra setting there because there's something else that this has that the Crane 4E doesn't have, but a little bit more about that in just a bit. The configuration of the buttons, of the physical buttons on the gimbal is the same. So you have the little joystick, the record button, and also the mode change button. There is this dial on the side that's different on these two gimbals, but a little bit more on that in just a bit. The one thing that I find with this gimbal, even with the Weebill 3S too, is that this seems to be designed for people who are right-handed. For example, if you want to control the joystick here with your thumb, it works if you're right-handed, but if you're left-handed, you really can't control that joystick because you hold it with your left hand, and yeah, there's just no way that you can operate that joystick or these buttons if you're left-handed. So this is something that it's been around, a little bit of a right-handed bias, I guess. Now let's go over some of the differences between these two gimbals, and this is where you'll determine which one's for you. First things first is the price. At the time of the making of this video, the base price for the Zhiyun Crane 4 is $529 US. If you wanted to get the wrist rest and the sling, you're looking at about $30 more, so about $569 US. In my opinion, if you are looking at getting the Crane 4, I'll definitely go with this option with the wrist rest and the sling grip. I really enjoy using these two, and the wrist rest may sound gimmicky, but it actually does help in practice if you're shooting over longer periods of time. The Cinepeer Crane 4E is on Zhiyun's budget line. So this one is cheaper than the Crane 4, and it comes at $399 US. And again, that's just the base model right here. It does not come with the wrist rest or the sling grip. If you wanted to get the wrist rest and the sling grip separately, this is part of Zhiyun's Master Move package, and it costs about $100 US. If you're still watching and if you're finding value in this video, please support, and it would be great if you hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. There are two main things that are different between these two gimbals. The Crane 4 has a built-in 10-watt fill light that is also by color, whereas the Cinepeer Crane 4E does not have it. So you're able to control this fill light with this dial on the side. You long press it to turn on the fill light, and you can then adjust the power and the strength of that light. If you press it once, you switch it to the temperature mode, and you can adjust the color temperature of that light. Now on the Crane 4E, you still have that dial, but this does not control a fill light because there's no fill light on this. Instead, you're able to map different controls on this dial to your camera. For example, aperture control or ISO. And unfortunately on this one, because this controls the light, you're not able to map any of those controls to this on the Crane 4. Another thing about the Crane 4 is that it has a small tightening magnetic wrench screw kind of thing, which makes it very handy for you to tighten the screws on the camera and the plate to the camera and all of that. The Crane 4E does not have that. The Crane 4 comes with a carrying case, whereas the Cinepeer 4E does not. The way you go from horizontal to vertical shooting on both of these gimbals is pretty much the exact same thing, with one minor difference. You detach this base plate here by unlocking it and sliding it out of that horizontal plate, and then you can just attach the entire camera with the plate vertically and slide it in on the vertical plate here on the side of this axis. So it is very quick and seamless. However, you do have to rebalance your camera a tiny bit after you do this, depending on the setup that you have. The one minor difference between these two is that this horizontal plate can be detached on the Crane 4. So if you had a bigger camera setup and you needed more space, you can easily detach that, so you have a little bit more clearance here on the bottom. However, on the Crane 4E, you're not able to detach this horizontal plate because there's a screw right there and they just don't let you do that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing that's different too is that the Crane 4 has a balance indicator light. So the three axes, the roll, the pan, and the tilt have indicator lights that tell you whenever the gimbal is properly balanced and when it's not. When it's properly balanced, all the lights will be white, and when any of these axes are not properly balanced, they're turned red so that you know which axis you need to work on. Depending on the axis that you're working on, you might be able to just balance while the gimbal is still on and wait for that light to go from red to white. However, my recommendation will be to just power off the gimbal completely, adjust your balance again and turn it back on, and see if your light went from red to white, telling you that it's properly balanced. You are able to turn that balance indicator on and off as well in the settings, but honestly, it's just very useful just to have that on, so just keep it on. Zhiyun has a full list of cameras that are compatible with these gimbals, and the compatibility is pretty much the same for both of these gimbals because they have the same payload and they're both pretty much the same in its physical size. In my experience, I really enjoy using this gimbal with the Zhiyun Master Move, which is the wrist rest and the sling grip. I find it very useful if I want to shoot holding a gimbal with two hands, or when I want to go in under select mode and then just hold it like this for low shots. One thing to keep in mind though is that you do have to adjust that angle a little bit more if you wanted to extend that sling grip, because it could get in the way of the roll motor here. So you might not get it to be fully in the center of the gimbal if you fully extend that rod. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the wrist rest, in my opinion, comes in very handy, and it adds to the ergonomic experience of operating the gimbal, especially after operating for longer periods of time. If you ask me, I would definitely get the Crane 4 with the Smart Move package, because I think operating a gimbal of this size and with potentially heavier cameras, having the sling grip is going to make your life a lot easier for double or two-handed operation. Having that wrist rest is also very useful, and if you decide to go with the Cinepeer Crane 4E, I would definitely recommend to get the Smart Move package. However, if you buy that separately with the Cinepeer Crane 4E, you're getting close to the price of the Crane 4 anyway. So that's one thing for you to consider, see which one's more worth it for you. But whichever gimbal you end up getting, I think you should definitely get the sling grip and the wrist rest to go along with your gimbal. If the fill light's important to you, and if you like the idea of having the balance indicator, then the Crane 4 is for you. So that's it for this video. If you're still here, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And here are a couple more videos you could watch next, and I'll see you then.